Hey, this is Travis TiKevin83 McGeehan here with TASBot showing off SmashBot live at Long Island Retro. We're showing TASBot playing Super Smash Bros. Against people live at the convention center. So if I go in here and pick my character, so I'm usually a Captain Falcon player. I'm going to start and then I pick a random stage. It'll pick one of the 5 that TASBot can play here with SmashBot, and now I'm dead. Or almost dead. Oh yep, now I'm dead. So they'll beat you like that every time. Thanks so much. We're going to present SmashBot and the rest of what the TASBot team does. I'm Travis, TiKevin83. I'm a React developer with Gordon Food Service. You can see the trucks around. I work on some other React apps. And I'm an ambassador for the TASVideos site and an administrator with TASBot. So if you ever go to TASVideos.org, I help show off events there, and that's where we've got all the cards we distributed to you guys that links out to our sites for that stuff. So, and we also have...
Hi everyone. I'm Ownasaurus, Justin. My day job is actually as a professor of dentistry, which of course goes really well with programming and video games. So my night job is that, and I'm the TASBot hardware lead, which basically means that the device that TASBot holds that plugs into the console that makes the TASs work on real hardware, that's my baby, building off of work that came off from people before me.
Yeah, so we're going to go down first the TAS rabbit hole because there's 3 letters in TAS, and we're going to explain what all of them mean before we get anything else. So who here knows what a speed run is? Okay, almost everybody, perfect. But just to recap, speedrunning is attempting to beat a video game as fast as possible. Speedrunners define for themselves what beating the game means in different categories. For example, you might call beating a game like Pokemon beating the Elite Four, or you might also call it beating the Pokedex. Or you might also have different categories for like using glitches, or going straight to the credits using glitches, or not using glitches at all. And then, of course, speedrun.com tracks a lot of those records for human runners. But then if we go from speedrun, we need to know then what is a tool-assisted speedrun. A tool-assisted speedrun scripts out a speedrun frame by frame instead of having a human play in real time. This is done with an emulator and with save states, snapshots of the entire state of a game and console to enable you to rewind and try different inputs until you find the fastest combination and essentially act like a player piano scripting through all of those inputs. Ultimately, this showcases the fastest possible speedrun that could ever be done by a perfect speedrunner. And you can kind of see what a player piano would look like, and actually the TAS inputs look a lot like that. We call it TAS Studio. You can see in TAS Studio, you'll see like A's and B's instead of the little lines of MIDI for a piano. So then we just talked about what a tool-assisted speedrun is, but then what is TASBot? TASBot is our mascot for what we call TAS console verification or hardware verification. Through a series of precise steps, we take those piano rolls of TAS inputs, doing input frame, and instead of sending them to an emulator, we send them to real original console hardware. This verifies that the console and the emulators that we make behave exactly the same for all the purposes we need for speedrunning. And the TASBot team then works to improve the accuracy of emulators and to better match verification efforts to document the ways inputs can be sent to real consoles with precise timing. We also go to shows like this and then tell you guys all about it. So what I'm going to show that first is a live demo of the bread and butter of what the TASBot team shows at events. We're going to see first the Pokemon Coliseum exploit, where we cause a buffer overflow in Coliseum. You're going to see that from a hacked save file that was injected on a Wii. That is going to be used to boot Swiss, the GameCube homebrew manager, and from there we're going to launch Game Boy Interface. Game Boy Interface was designed by Extremes, and it replaces the need for the basic startup disk that you would use on the GameCube to launch the Game Boy player. So it has a couple of nifty features like improving the video output for modern LCD monitors like the one we're going to show on, but also, very crucially, it has the feature to be able to load TAS replay movies off of an SD card. So we're going to see like the actual TAS played back on the hardware here. So I'm going to switch over from our slide deck to the TAS on the GameCube.
Good. While you're doing that, I'll just say for this task, again, the inputs are sort of inside the GameCube. There's an SD card connected through memory card slot B, and that's going to be just a contrast with what you're going to see later, which is when we're showing Smash Brothers, that's actually going to be going through the controller port.
Yeah, sorry, we gotta enable the progressive scan mode, so I make sure I don't destroy this guy's very special TV.
What are we gonna do?
So there's a thing called interlacing that happens like when you send a video signal to a CRT. It's where the video frames are rendered every other line instead of as a whole frame at once. So we have to make sure that this progressive mode is turned on. Otherwise, when it's flickering the lines, it can actually destroy modern televisions.
Is that actually true?
Yeah, I've actually seen TVs that have burn-in from that, even like LCDs.
God, yeah.
Is that even a thing with 4K TVs?
Yeah, even 4K TVs can have that problem. You have to get rid of them.
It came off actually before you pressed anything. Yep.
It's probably go away.
So we're going to play Pokemon Coliseum for just a few minutes here. We've got to go to an area of the game where we can get a really long name to show up. The name is so long it causes something called the buffer overflow, where the intended amount of memory space for the name is really small, so a bunch of the name gets written to other parts of the game's memory that might be used for like holding how many Pokeballs you have or other crazy things. And when it executes those other parts of memory, it's going to reboot us into Swiss instead of playing the game.
So you're going to want to pay attention to when, I believe it's the second Pokemon that appears at the bottom of the screen. Watch out real quick for that name of the Pokemon, okay? Not the trainer, not the Sunker, not the Hoppip.
Okay.
And now we have total control of the GameCube and we can do whatever we want with it. So what we're going to use it for is to load Game Boy Interface Speedrun with, what we have here is like a whole bunch of different copies of Game Boy Interface pointed at different TAS movies. So one that we could show you actually, we're not going to show you in this demo while the video is running because DreamWorks might be really mad at us, but we have a TAS of the Shrek GBA video movie that just goes and selects the credits as fast as possible in the chapter select menu. But we're not going to show that on the recording. We're just going to show you guys a TAS of Pokemon Yellow as I pull out the controller here.
There's music coming
You can see it's actually playing the game. We don't have anything plugged into the controller port. It's just reading inputs off of the SD card in the second memory card slot.
Oh, that's the so that's the control in the top left, right?
Yeah, and you can see the inputs that are happening in the controls in the top left of the screen. It's actually also skipped menuing to like change the text speed. It can do that frame perfectly by holding a button through every print of the text, and now it will switch all the options over.
Yeah, so fast.
Yeah. There's a glitch in Pokemon Yellow where if you press left on the same frame as you press A to open the options menu, it shifts all the options one to the left. Because it's actually holding the left button as it prints each option.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
If we let this go and play for 10 minutes, it would keep going and actually beat the game. But we want to be able to show you guys TASBot too. So we're just going to show you a couple seconds of it playing Pokemon Yellow, and we're going to switch over to doing the TASBot stuff too. gonna turn it down more. Does anybody have any questions about what's going on now with the initial TASBot setup?
So what program do you use to create the? Well, that's what we talk about later.
It's called BizHawk, actually. BizHawk is an emulator that we use in the TASVideos scene, and it like perfectly emulates tons of different consoles. So like the NES, the SNES. It's not quite perfect with the N64. It's actually been getting a lot better with the N64 lately. So we used to not be able to do tasks of things like Pokemon Snap because they would just crash the N64 emulators. But we have support now for the Angry Lion plugin, which does much better emulation of the N64 even. So around that era, it starts to get less perfect.
And I'd just like to say that's why we do this console verification, because emulators aren't perfect.
Yeah.
We and other programmers try and make them as accurate as possible, but then someone goes, oh, that's crazy, that's so cool, we beat it so fast, but could someone really do that on a real console? And so that's where TASBot came about, to show, yes, this can really work on a real console.
Yeah, and you can see this can even manipulate the RNG of battles and stuff. Like, because it knows what's going to happen every frame through the entire game, we're going to beat this battle while in red bar, and then level up maintaining red bar, skipping all those level up jingles.
Yeah, for those who don't know Pokemon speedrunning, when your health is low, that is a good thing in speedrunning. It saves certain sound effects that have to play, and so to play as fast as possible, you have to be just teetering on fainting for as much of the run as possible. Say it again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so because it's playing the audio of the red bar jingle, the CPU is too busy doing that, and it can't do any of the other audio processing. So it skips all the other audio jingles.
Yeah, so like the doo-doo, 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 low health noise takes priority.
What was that color change though?
Color change?
Oh, that's the Game Boy Color.
Yeah, so this system we're running on is the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance has an entire Game Boy Color in it, and the Game Boy Color can play both Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. Pokemon Yellow is actually a Game Boy game. It's not a Game Boy Color game. It's a Game Boy game with color enhancements that give it certain effects on the SNES and allows it to change palettes like in certain situations when it moves between towns. The full Game Boy Color games don't have the notch in the upper right to switch the power on and off on the original Game Boy.
Oh, not a single Pidgey.
Yeah, it's so good with manipulating the RNG, it will never get an encounter unless it wants one.
So you just manipulate the code for the game or something? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, it's not really manipulating the code so much, it knows what's going to happen with the code.
So maybe if you walked forward, you would have gotten into an encounter, and so the person making the run takes a step forward and says, no, we don't want that, that's slow. And they pause a frame and then try walking forward. And that slight stutter step, which seems like it would waste time, ends up saving a lot of time because you save a whole battle.
Yeah.
So that's how this is made.
Yeah. In Pokemon, you'll actually see a lot, it will use the A button to like see if there's a Pokeball or a trainer to interact with in front of you. That delays 2 frames while it's doing that check, and that causes you to be able to manipulate the RNG to either get or not get an encounter at any given time.
Are you
So-
going through trainer flag? Or?
I think we might as well just run the. We ended up getting through the beginning of our presentation long enough. I think we can finish showing you guys the rest of this cast, and then we'll switch it over to SmashBot.
It's like
Is SmashBot also gonna speedrun Smash?
It's a little crazier than that even. So usually with speedrunning, we are doing this sort of stuff where we know everything that's going to happen in advance. SmashBot doesn't know what you're going to play in advance, right? You can play whatever moves you want against SmashBot, and it will still beat you.
I'll explain that. I'll explain that a little more as it comes up. But
Yeah.
SmashBot is an interesting union between the TASBot community and a couple other communities, and that's why, even though it's not a traditional speedrun, we're involved.
Yeah.
You'll see in a moment.
It's wonderful. In Red Blue, there are no Pokemon catch tutorials. And then in Yellow, because they had none, they were like, oh, we gotta add 2. So there's the one with Pikachu and one with the old man here.
Up, no rat for him.
Nope.
You should probably play Pokemon Go.
Alrighty, so how many people Charmander? Huh?
Yeah.
Charmander?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Bulbasaur? Yeah. Bulbasaur, very nice.
Even
very
the
nice.
Stabber with Bulbasaur, okay.
Squirtle.
Turtle power.
And because we're playing Pokemon Yellow, how about Pikachu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ah, yes, yes. You can do Pikachu and another one, yeah.
So, for any of you who played Yellow, this part looks pretty crazy. We're getting no encounters all the way through the Verdian Forest. And then at the end of the forest, we're going to get an encounter on the same tile that we get into a trainer's vision. Because of that, we're going to be able to die to the encounter, and then as we're dying, the trainer battle will activate, but then we'll warp out as if we're still dying. So the trainer battle will still be happening in the background while we're playing through the rest of the game after having died.
So, what'd you say about no Pidgeys? Uh-oh. Pidgeotto.
That is a 1% encounter normally that we've manipulated to happen every time there.
It seems like you could have.
Oh man, they got a crit on us.
Darn.
Wow, so much for that type
You can see the
advantage.
exclamation point for the trainer battle starting.
Did you see that little exclamation point? So, we're in a battle, but we're not in a battle. So, how can we take advantage of that?
We're going to get a Pidgey that has very specific stats, extremely specific stats that act as code to send us to the Hall of Fame. And we've also already done that with Pikachu. So Pikachu's stats are very specific code to help send us to the Hall of Fame. And then we're going to go and do some really crazy looking stuff in Verdian Forest, or Verdian City first.
What language is the
Game Boy Assembly. The Game Boy games were all written in Game Boy Assembly, and the task then doesn't actually, it's not written in a language, it's just a sequence of like, do this input at this time. Oh, and I should mention, it knows what time to do the inputs at by watching how much audio is coming back up from the Game Boy player. The Game Boy player has 1 megahertz, 1-bit audio, which is an extremely strange codec, but very coincidentally gives us very precise timing of how much time has passed in the console.
Oh, bye Pikachu. Pikachu's in the box. Thank you, Pikachu, for sitting in the box to help us go to the Hall of Fame. Appreciate it.
Now, in this room, we need to see the city map to get certain values in RAM. At the same time, we're pushing the little fly guy as far left as possible. We need his X and Y coordinates in RAM to be specific values.
Sparrow?
Yep, the Spearow, yep. And then we're going to jump the ledge. That helps freeze the coordinates to not get overwritten by other parts of things in RAM.
There's some like thinking there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, the type of people who makes these very technical, glitchy tasks are often programmers themselves or programmatically inclined. My Pokemon game didn't
Wow,
do
what
this
kind of
as a
ghost
kid.
decided to open up shop in
I've
Verdian
seen 90
Forest?
Master Balls.
Yes, we actually wanted fewer of them just for the speedrun.
Orb!
This is we actually don't want this to happen, but because of all the other glitches we're doing, we have to get an encounter there. And now we're doing something called mass corruption. We're corrupting huge sections of memory in our Pokemon venue.
Yay, everyone!
And that's how you beat the game, right?
Wait, did our Pidgey really become a Kangaskhan?
Yes.
9 minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine
All right. Let's quiet down, guys. We're gonna have time for more Q&A after the presentation. So we're gonna switch over. We're gonna go back to the main slide deck, and we're gonna do a little more explanation before we switch over to Smash.
Real quick though, who made that task? That's his task. Many people in the TASBot community, like myself, either do really small tasks or don't tasks. We just focus on the console, but TiKevin83 is good at both. So
Yeah, that's actually my main thing is doing Pokemon Yellow tasks. So.
he's a Pokemon master. Okay, so we told you what a task is. We told you what TASBot is. TASBot is basically the mascot. But what TASBot is holding over here, I don't want to pull any wires off, but he's holding this little device in his hands. And now I'm not going to badge off. But this device we call the Task Replay device. Okay? And the task replay device is actually what sends the inputs to the console. So what it does is it takes that file of inputs, the player piano roll that was made in the emulator, and a computer reads that file and sends commands through a USB wire to this replay device. This replay device is called the TASVideos. It's the one that I made. It builds up on work from previous people who contributed to the TASBot community. It takes the best features of all those and puts them together. And what this is basically a glorified controller because it's sending inputs to the console. So, okay, how do you be a controller? How does a controller actually work? So it's really, I like to think of it like a bunch of nagging kids in the back of the car. Yeah. Are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. So the way a controller works is the console actually asks the controller. And the console goes, what buttons are pressed? And it goes, okay, well, it's A, it's B, it's L, it's diagonal this way. Okay, thank you. And then it waits like 16 milliseconds, and then it's like, what buttons are pressed now? And it just does, what buttons are pressed, what buttons are pressed. And that is happening typically for most games about 60 times per second, often 60 hertz frame rate. They usually match. They don't always match. Some games perhaps notoriously run at 30 or 20 or fewer frames per second. Smash Melee, which we're going to get to in a moment, actually pulls the controller 120 times a second, even though it's ignoring half of them. And that's a whole talk in and of itself of Melee's polling, because that's its own rabbit hole. But so it depends on the game, and this is again true for most retro consoles, the way it works. Off the top of my head, the older Nintendo consoles, Genesis, Atari, they all worked with the same pull response, as opposed to some more modern systems with USB controllers, which might work a little different.
More like this. And that's why we aren't using the TASVideos with this, because it doesn't work the same way as some of the older consoles. We will be for the Smash Melee stuff, and we don't for the Game Boy verification.
Right. Yeah, Game Boy polling is another whole thing. Okay, so it mimics a controller in the way we just described. This is like a multi-replay device. It supports multiple consoles. So one thing the computer tells it which to behave like. So for Smash, it says, hey, behave like a GameCube controller. Okay? And again, it responds exactly how we want to. But for a task that has those predetermined inputs, as Kevin referred to earlier, for SmashBot, if you're playing someone in a live match of Super Smash Brothers, which for those of you who don't know, it's a fighting game, so the other person or the computer can be doing anything at any point in time, and it has to be able to react. So how in the world does it do that? Well, it's actually calculating on the fly based on exactly what's going on in the game.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to explain how to SmashBot. The first thing that you need is a Nintendo GameCube. And you need a 2001 console like the GameCube to connect to the internet. So we need to get data out of the console as it's running. So one way you might think to do that is use the official broadband adapter. There actually was a broadband adapter that was made for Phantasy Star Online for the GameCube. But it's terrible. It's really, really bad at being an Ethernet adapter. And then also, another way you can do it is, we could just run the GameCube game on a Wii, because the Wii has a Wi-Fi stack. So if you run it like in Nintendo, where it's actually running the GameCube game in the Wii's mode, you could use the Wii's Wi-Fi adapter or the USB Ethernet adapter that also existed for the Wii. However, those are also terrible.
For reference, a frame, when we say 60 times a second, a frame is roughly 16 milliseconds. When you make a function call in programming to communicate over the Ethernet adapter, every time you make a call in code to communicate with it, it adds 10, it should occur in microseconds. It's about 10 milliseconds of latency. So 10 out of our 16 milliseconds that we need is eaten just by even trying to use the Ethernet adapter. So those don't quite work for our purposes.
So instead, we have this little special device that sits in the memory card port of the GameCube. And it's effectively allowing us to send the game state out from Melee over the memory card port instead of any of the official traditional internet stock devices.
Let me
Yeah.
just hold that up so that people in the back can see it. But yeah, looks like a memory card. This is actually a 3D printed shell. I printed this out of my home. These might be up on my GitHub. If they're not, they should be. This board inside, I didn't design this board. This was designed by Fizzy, actually, for those of you who play Melee over Slippy. So Fizzy designed the board, but it only ever got used like once or twice because then he just put his stuff all into the Wii's homebrew. But in the TASBot community, we like to do it on original, unmodified consoles to show, hey, this would work on real hardware.
Yeah.
So we went back, I programmed a new firmware onto this and made this snazzy little case. And this, yes, gets plugged into memory card slot B. And yes, we are taking data, not just save data, but we can spit any data we want out of memory card slot B and send it over Ethernet.
Yeah, so similar to what you saw in the Pokemon Coliseum startup, we need to gain total control of the GameCube, but not in Coliseum, we need to do it in Melee. So there's a couple different possible ace exploits in Melee. You had a question?
So does the adapter also function as a memory card to
We have the slot A acting as the memory card for like storing the save data for Melee.
Okay.
So slot B, where this Ethernet adapter is working, doesn't do anything memory card related.
Maybe that's a good idea for the future, but currently, no, it does not.
Yeah. So we need some way of gaining total control of Melee. The first possibility would be the home run contest. You can actually hit the bag too far in the home run contest, past the 10,000 feet limit, and causing the game to crash.
Does anyone know the character that's really good at doing that? Home run
Yoshi?
Yoshi, Donkey Kong.
Ganondorf?
Ganondorf, actually, is typically who we use, although there were some other good answers. But Ganondorf finishing with the bat hitting the sandbag and his Warlock punch, the big he faces backwards, gets the reverse hitbox that sends it extra far.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do though, some run contests.
Yeah, so because of that, and because of a few other things, we don't use that for the arbitrary code execution. A second thing you could possibly do is something called the black hole glitch, where you spawn tons and tons of peach turnips, and that crashes the game. But it doesn't crash the game in quite the right ways that we need to be able to get total control of the GameCube. So what we use is the name entry exploit. So we have a custom save file that we've injected onto the memory card from a Nintendo Wii, just like we did with Pokemon Coliseum. But instead of the name being too long of one of the Pokemon, our name is too long in the Melee UI. So the UI only allows you to input 4 letters, but if you inject something from a save file, you can make it however long you want. And we do that on the Wii, and then we just plug it back into the GameCube. Now, how do we exploit a Nintendo Wii to be able to put a custom hack save onto the GameCube memory card on a Wii? We use the EULA exploit. This is a really crazy exploit that allows you to gain total control of the Wii. We change DNS settings on the Wii to point the Wii towards a server we control, and then when it tries to go up and say the end user license agreement to agree to being online with a Wii, instead of getting the official one hosted on the opera.com website, it gets the one pointed to by our fake DNS server. And that sends malicious JavaScript, which exploits this CVE 2009-0689, and then installs the homebrew channel. So then we have homebrew access on the Wii. From homebrew on the Wii, we get GSMM to be able to take SD card slot backups and load them onto memory cards. So this was actually a feature originally intended to be used for WiiWare games. So you could download a WiiWare and store it on your SD card, but that was horrible and slow and didn't work very well, and it was much better for hacking the Wii. Now, what does our exploit do with that ability? So once we've actually gained total control of Melee, in the same principle as Project Slippy, we're sending the game state out over the memory card bus over Ethernet.
And I'll take that one step further. Not only in the same principle as Slippy, but it's actually doing the Slippy protocol. So when you save a replay, so again, I guess for those who don't know, Melee, you can't play it online with other people on the console. Although hopefully in the future we're going to figure out a way to do that. They made an emulator where you can play Smash Melee, and Fizzy made this Project Slippy, which allows you to play it online with good netcode, because Nintendo is wonderful at certain things, but some things it's not great at are netcode. For any of you who have tried playing different newer, Brawl, Smash 4, Ultimate Online, it's not necessarily the most smooth experience, whereas Project Slippy allowed for rollback. But it's not just that. It's that it also allowed for a replay system and all these other things. Now, in order to save a replay, in every frame of the game, it needs to know the X and Y coordinates of every character. What is their action? Are they standing? Are they jumping? Are they squatting? Are they doing an A move, a B move? Are they in hit stun? Are they shielding? And so, by taking the Slippy protocol, that is what is being sent to SmashBot to determine what is going on, who is where. And if you don't mind going back.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you're good. But yeah, so that goes through the, if any of you know Texas Instruments, maybe from their calculators, or maybe from TiKevin83's name. So yeah, that same TI is actually the microcontroller in that memory card device. And we take the data out. If you know what EXI is, it's a memory card communicates via just EXI, if you know what that is. That EXI gets read, spit through the Ethernet, which goes to this computer, which goes to SmashBot, which calculates what to do next, which then sends the input through the USB wire to the TAS replay device, to the console, and that whole chain has to occur in less than 16 milliseconds, or SmashBot will make a mistake, and SmashBot is supposed to be perfect. Needless to say, this is why we couldn't afford to use 10 of those milliseconds just using Ethernet.
Do you have the common calls? Or the melee disk?
I can go check. I didn't take that.
Okay. We have to find our disks for this a second now.
The Coliseum case is on top of the backpacks.
Okay.
So under here, or
No.
okay.
I will be back in 2 seconds. I'll move this across the screen here.
Your 2 seconds
Da,
are
da,
up.
da, 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 da.
Is that your mascot, the rock thing? I've been looking at
Yes,
it.
yes. So this is TASBot. This is our mascot right here. Originally, we used the Rob. For those of you who may have been following us for more years, originally we just used the Rob. As we gained in popularity, we didn't want Nintendo to think we were stealing their imagery, since that is a licensed Nintendo product. And so a subset of the TASBot community had this side project called TASBot X. How can we redesign a mascot that is in the likeness of Rob, but still its own unique entity? And so thus, the new TASBot was born. And so this is entirely 3D printed. And yeah.
Seems to be close, so that-
I was gonna say, aren't the lights in, aren't there supposed to be like lights in the TASBot's eyes that like do little emotes while it
Yes, that is a feature of TASBot. We don't have the one here right now doing that, but Dwango's TASBot does do that.
Yes, so there is only one TASBot. But, if there's an East Coast of we may have a clone of him. To the public, there's one TASBot, but the one who has the functional eyes and all that code and everything, we didn't have one available for this
I'm not reading the
presentation.
question, but good question. Does the delay from a 4K or HDTV affect the TASBot at all?
It does not, because it's a good question. The question is, does the delay from TV
4K,
affect
yeah.
TASBot?
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't, because TASBot is reading it from the game engine, from its memory itself. It's not seeing through video output. So the video delay will not affect its performance. Okay, so hey, Melee!
Good on, man. It's not man.
Some would say the best Smash game. If you're here, it's possible you believe that too.
But it's not just any Melee. Remember, we injected a custom save file on this copy of Melee. So when I go into name entry, it's going to crash back to the start menu.
What happened, it looks like it just went back to the start. What happened is it crashed. We modified the game so that it spits out the information through port B, and then, and now it just hit start, please. And then now that that's running, and let's plug him in.
Oh, yeah, we didn't.
this
Plug him in. Play. He's supposed to be. Okay, we're doing that.
We got
No problem. Yep.
It's very precise which port the guys are plugged into here too.
Woohoo! So we're doing this.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is SmashBot's code played by TASBot on a real console. So SmashBot's a little flashy. So the way he selects his character is by spamming random until he gets Fox, because of course SmashBot plays Fox. You know, Fox only, Final D, no items. And then while he's waiting for you to select, he just moves the cursor in circles. So yes, this Fox is being played by You're Dead.
Yeah.
He's played by You're Dead.
And this is what perfect gameplay looks like. This is a technique called wave shining. SmashBot loves wave shining. That down B move that you might use as a reflector is actually one of the best attacks in the game. It comes out in 1 frame. In most fighting games, move comes out in maybe like 5 frames, 7 frames. So a 1 frame move with some invincibility that combos into itself. And not on every character in the game. He also knows, based on your character's weight, what stage you're on, exactly when he can up smash to kill you. So he does it as early as possible. If you know what DI is, melee players, even assuming perfect DI, he knows exactly the minimum percent to get the
Once you
KO.
get stuck in that move, you can't get out there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's-
So,
May I?
yeah, go ahead.
Yep. He also knows
This
that.
is the one that's plugged.
Okay. He also knows he's winning, so he won't approach. So you can kind of on this stage, you can kind of drag him around a little bit. If he's losing, he would approach. But if I come down a little up, I'll try and play. I'll try and play on the lag. Oh. Nope. Nope.
It's like when they made like that robot to like beat everybody in chess, but not a Smash.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like that.
I also don't play Falcon. Smash the eye. Let's see if I can get out. Nope. Crouch cancel? Nope. No crouch cancel? Attack.
So now he knows exactly what the Smash attack to kill you. It's like it does my percentage.
If you try a slower move, he charges the smash because he knows you're going to be stuck vulnerable. So, you know, yeah. So he really kind of taunts you by doing everything, making advantage of every. If I try and get, oh no, I took too long to tell. If you try and do a get on the stage attack, he shields it at the last possible frame and then punishes you. That is SmashBot in a nutshell. I just wanted to show you real quick because we went, but yeah. So while you know he's like, come on, play already. He just makes his cursor go around in circles. Yeah. We'll take a couple questions and then maybe we'll. Or were those hands who want to come up and play?
I got. Well, I wanted to play, but I also have a question. What would happen if you put 2 like TASBots against each other?
We've had SmashBots play each other. We can't do it today. There is a little variance in their behavior, but they kind of punch and shine each other at the same time, and they clang. And but you can get a little bit of variation sometimes. Yes, then yes.
I'll say I could try if we're doing that now.
Okay, and let's.
We'll do that in just a second.
Yeah, a couple questions, and then we'll have more questions later. But just if there's any questions at this point, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I already told her. Sorry. Yes.
So with the speed of the TASBot, is that it's reading your inputs before you could immediately react to it? Is that how it's reading you?
So it's close to that, but instead of reading the inputs, it's reading after the inputs have already gone into the system. It's technically reading how the player, so Captain Falcon, let's say I press the jump button, it knows that he's going into the jump animation. So it's not seeing the Y button was pressed, but instead it's seeing Captain Falcon is going to what's called a jump squat. He's getting ready to jump, and so that's what TASBot reads, or SmashBot
So
reads.
it's like rubbing netcode, basically, right?
It's similar to that. Yeah. We had a question in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how would TASBot fare against the adventure mode in this game?
There have been tasks of the adventure mode that I don't believe they've been replicated on console, but there are tasks of the adventure mode and they are crazy. They're absolutely insane to watch.
Coming soon. Work in progress, perhaps, maybe, possibly. Spoilers? Yeah.
So I always wonder, how long does it usually take to make these? Like, how long did it take to make your Pokemon run, and how long did it take to make this?
The Pokemon run I showed, it took me about 3 months. I made it for GDQX in 2018. Yeah, it's like 3 months of work for 10 minutes. And the glitchless one, I have one that's an hour and 30 minutes. That's glitchless, and that took like a year to make. It was so long. We have a question back there.
Question: have you ever used this with a worse character? Like
We want to, like, that was something people have been talking about, like, what if you may use Bowser instead of Fox? That's a really good question, and I think that we could do that at like a next event type